Hey everyone, thanks for joining.
Hey, Daniel.
Hey, so let's give it another minute or so to get folks on the call, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Yeah, Marge.
Yeah, just quickly, I made an unreasonable request of Daniel to kind of put this all together for the meeting, but then I realized that actually the email chain that we had used is pretty navigable, and so sorry about that.
No, thanks, Marge. And sorry I didn't get to respond. Ken and I went over on our last one, and it's been a busy morning, but I was able to kind of get some of the recommendations from Ken and Sean integrated into the findings and recommendations as close as I could. And Marge expressed some concerns with like the pagination and like following along. So the changes I made, I don't think it'll change the page numbers of what you're going to see, which is good. They only add maybe a couple lines. So hopefully that helps, Marge. Thanks for connecting those dots, because I think that's really important to make sure we're all looking at the latest content here.
Yeah, I didn't see anything from Sean.
Not Sean. It must have been John. Sorry.
I did review the circular economy, that the terms and definitions, I was fine with the language, but I see there's been changes since. And then the comment on the order of what's it called? The long-term plan, like contracting, those are my two main comments.
Okay, Sean, if you can bring those up when we are covering them, just so we make sure not to lose them, because with all the different comments, I'm having a hard time tracking what's supposed to go where. So let's go ahead and get started here. And the goal for today is just to review the whole document and as a group essentially approve or not approve or rework language and make sure we all feel comfortable with where the document is at. So as I did in the landfill A1 subcommittee, I'm hoping to have the group guide us to where there is most important to focus on. I'm not super concerned that I think we're going to have enough time to get through this document today, which is great. So if it's okay with the group, we can start with findings and recommendations, since that's going to go to the work group, but I'm open to suggestions. Okay, seeing some thumbs up. So Ken and Marge did lots of excellent work adding some wordsmithing to the findings and recommendations. I had a chance to add a couple of comments to the areas that I thought we might be able to improve. I don't know if I got many other comments from folks about Marge and Ken's rework of this, but I wanted to open it up to any questions, comments, concerns from the group. I know I jotted down a couple on the document, but if anybody else has some, we can start there. Or maybe let's give John a second to jump in here, because John had some good comments as well.
Maybe you could just quickly address this. On my copy, SMM R9 is blank. Is that correct, or am I?
So the one that I'm looking at shows the track changes. So it shows R9 as like a strike through. If you go, are you looking at it in Word?
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I see something here. Oh, moved and integrated into R3. Okay.
So thanks for joining on, John. So we're just going to start at the top of the document, work our way through. So right now we're in findings and recommendations. Maybe let's go ahead and start with findings just to get through those. We'll capture those changes and then we'll move on to recommendations. So I know let's start with Marge and John both made suggestions. Marge had a finding that she wanted to add. John proposed adding it into another finding. So I wanted to resolve that. Let me go ahead. I'm realizing I'm not sharing my screen. Let me go ahead and share the screen if that's going to be helpful here. All right, can everyone see that screen I have up? Okay, seeing some nods, excellent. So I'm pretty sure that Marge, you're proposing finding 9, and John via email proposed a way to roll that into finding 3, I believed. I wanted to see what you both thought. Marge, do you want that to retain as finding 9, or is John's addition to finding 3, which I'll scroll up here, adequate to address that?
Let me explain my reasoning. I mean, I feel like OSU is the really big source where these committees could find really good subject matter experts in particular areas. But I don't think it should be. I would think we should try to word it in a way that includes other universities in Oregon. Because those would be just as accessible. Well, maybe not as accessible, but I just thought that was a way of consolidating it. But if not, then we can separate it. It's no big deal.
I'm good with that. I think that's a really important point, and I'm glad you saw that, John.
No worries. Yeah, I think it was really important to stress the importance of folks around here that may have that expertise.
Yes.
Excellent. So the proposal to remove finding 9 as its own finding, integrate that into finding 3 as John did. We're comfortable with that?
Yep.
Perfect. While we're on finding 3, I had one comment here, which was basically the finding that we had about the CAC was that CACs tend to review the technical experts' areas of disagreement. And I totally understand the rewording here to a wider scope of review, but I'm wondering if it's worth just, I guess my recommendation is that we capture the finding as we learned it from this process. So we capture the finding that a CAC, their role is sometimes to review the technical areas of disagreement. And then in our recommendation, we're saying we've already included language to go beyond that. So I guess I'm saying, is it worth just capturing what we actually learned? Because I don't think we necessarily had a finding from our process that it's a wider scope of review. During that discussion, I know that's not what we actually found, I guess is what I'm getting at. But we're recommending that it be a wider scope of review. Yeah, we have Marge and Ken.
wondering if, are you talking about our experience in the work group that, that perhaps there were technical ideas about the landfill, but then a bunch of people, residents, actually were able to add knowledge to that? Is that what,
No,
what you're making reference to?
So this actually came up when we were talking about like the RFP process. We had a really good conversation. I'm not sure if Marge and Ken, if you were in the room at the time, but we had a good conversation. And at one point, Sam and Brian and Ryan were all providing a lot of feedback on sort of how the advisory component worked within experiences that they've had. And this was a finding from Sam that he was basically saying in his experience with RFPs, there can be a TAC and a CAC. And he explained to us what the TAC and CAC from his experience scope was, where he said the CAC provided review and technical areas of disagreement. So this was just a finding to capture what we learned during that conversation. And I guess what I'm saying is we could leave that as a finding, since that was sort of the takeaway from that piece. But then to capture your perspective of the wider scope of review, that I think we've done that in the recommendation. So it was a small thing, but I just wanted to be true to what we had come away from. Yeah, Ken.
Yeah, I just wanted to, because what you just said is my recollection also. But so in the context of this sentence, so what I'm referring to is essentially that the idea that the CAC reviews the technical experts' areas of disagreement, that was indeed the way that CAC was defined for us by Sam, but that's not the way I, as a subcommittee member, received it. Do you see what I mean? So that's not actually a subcommittee finding. I think it's kind of how that landed. But I'm going to yield here, to Brian and Ryan. To Ryan, to know whether or not that's kind of a SAM specific definition of what a CAC role is, or not. I certainly want to get, eventually to the wider scope of review thing, because that's how I kind of internalized it, from the get-go. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Ken. Ryan and Sean and John, any thoughts?
So yeah, I appreciate what Ken's saying, because I remember as we were talking about this, Sam was really helping shed bring maybe some clarity to some discussions we were having about how the RFP process would work, and so it feels like this is just more of a, hey, this is what was discussed, the finding, right? I mean, this is the recommendations would be that yes, we agree that as generally defined above, a community advisory committee would be reviewing a technical expert's area of disagreement, and then I think then maybe in that spot is where we would add on to it. I guess I could see it both ways. It feels like if we delete review a technical expert's area of disagreement, it kind of changes the essential nature of what I understood a CAC to function as, at least as we were talking about at the time. So that makes sense.
Any other thoughts on that? Let's go to Sean and then Marge, if that's okay.
Yeah, I actually kind of piggyback of Ryan there. I like getting rid of the word disagreement. In my experience in government, when we have a citizen group and a technical group, I have to go back to my Chesapeake Bay and Maryland days, but I never saw that as a disagreement or a confrontational dynamic. It was, hey, the scientists are saying this is what the citizens are saying or residents are seeing, let's work this out. And so I wouldn't want to put that into language to start out of the gate that it was like that. I also want to be sure not to put in here what has been our people in this subcommittee's experience with Sam specifically. And that is just, this is a general finding. I really appreciate Ryan. Like, this is what we found. Then let's get to the recommendation further down to be more specific about it. So That's just kind of what's going on in my head right now.
Okay, Marge.
Oh, I just find it a little bit strange that it would be left to a citizen advisory committee to make a decision about expert testimony, you know, and maybe Ryan, maybe you can, you know, kind of clarify that a bit. I'm willing to let it go because I just don't think it's that important, but that's just what stuck and, you know, kind of stuck with me.
Yeah, I think that for me, the clarity comes when all we're talking about here is the contracting out process. As far as when it comes to technically, how are we submitting an RFP and what are we looking for? I think the technical advisory committee is going to be writing the RFP. The citizens advisory committee would be leaning into it and saying, no, that's not what we, you know, I mean, trying to make it more Benton County centric. If there's some disagreement on, you know, what is being said there. And so I agree with what Sean was said about, I don't like the word disagreement. And that's the one thing that does kind of rub me the wrong way because we're starting out with a negative. It's like all of a sudden the community advisory committee is going to be, you know, as you said, Marge, settling disputes. And that I don't think that's the intent. I think the intent is to clarify when the technical committee writes this up or gets this written, the community advisory committee is going to see how does this fit within the context of what was in the intent of the document that we're working. And if there's some disagreement or harmony, you know, things that need to be brought into harmony, I think that's where the community advisory committee would possibly weigh in. At least that's my understanding of kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah,
I'm
thanks
very
everyone.
comfortable with that explanation. You know, if we could get that into the gist of the finding, that would be great.
Okay.
As best we can.
Yeah, so I guess the proposal is to, instead of having the wider scope of review language, we would go with something close to what Ryan explained as kind of our takeaway from that conversation, memorializing that in a finding here. Ryan, could you recap briefly? I just wanted to make sure I'm capturing it correctly here.
I knew you were going to ask me to try to repeat what I just said. I was like,
well,
I guess where I'm seeing it, you know, because again, this finding 3 is talking about contracting out process. So the technical advisory committee is going to have to do what's technically required by the state provisions or, you know, public provisions for contracting out. The community advisory committee should be reviewing that document to ensure that it fits within everything we put in our work product here to make sure that they didn't, you know, by, you know, either omission or commission, didn't put something in there that either forgot something or should have been, you know, or put something in there that wasn't the intent, if that makes sense. So to me, it really feels like we're matching just what you're saying there. The technical folks got to write it and, you know, thou shalt do this, thou shalt have this many days to do it, The community advisory committee should be reviewing it and understanding, does this fit with the intent of what we're looking for from the community? And so if Daniel, if you could put that into words, then.
So I gave it my best shot here. So I just replaced it with
I like that.
CAC, which review the work product to ensure it matches the community's expectations. Yeah, Sean.
There's a lot of expectations that were going on in this process, to say the very least. Can we use something like perspectives or something a little bit? Every single person of the 93,000 people in this county had different expectations. So, but I really appreciate the focus on making sure it's consistent with whatever we work to ensure or with our community's perspectives, something like that.
Yeah, I like the idea to
That's just my thought, by the way.
I like the idea of like consistency with communities' perspectives, if that fits with the group. And I think that matches my takeaway from what Sam was talking about. My whole goal is just to make sure we're capturing what we learned and not like a recommendation here. Okay. To make sure the work product is consistent with the community's perspectives. All right, John.
I think that says it. I just wouldn't want to, like, I'm kind of with Sean on this, give the expectation here that every expectation is going to be met of the community. It's just very difficult. I don't think we can put that on.
Yeah.
And the finding really is just to say that this occurs, that there is technical advisory committees and there are community advisory committees, which we review the work product. I don't think we need to say even that, let me see, which review the work product. And I guess you're trying to say review the work product and ensure is consistent with. So when you get into that territory and ensure,
Yeah.
you're making a recommendation. So I would say just leave it at period, the product, review the work product. Because you're saying that these committees exist. What we want them to do may be another thing. I mean, I guess you could put that here as well. But what a technical advisory committee is supposed to do, what a community I don't know that there's a rule on that, or there's some definition. Maybe there probably is somewhere. I kind of get it. And I'm kind of also prepping for just the Ken's addition, which would be a scientific advisory committee. And that's an interesting idea as well. I'm just wondering, and we can get to this later, but I'm wondering, should that be mentioned here? And if it should, well, before that, how is that different than a technical advisory committee, scientific versus technical? And there might be something you're thinking of, Ken.
Well, I can defer to Marge since this is kind of Marge's idea initially. So take it away, Marge.
Okay, I guess what I was envisioning is that a scientific advisory committee would be different from a technical committee in that they have actual scientific expertise, maybe beyond what the consultant has. I mean, they are in their various areas. I mean, they have been working on all kinds of stuff that's way out there and breaking down plastics and how to recover, do various recovery of waste. And I can totally believe that the experts in those fields have expertise beyond what a consultant could have. We can't expect a consultant to be expert on this whole realm of how to make better use of our continual use of our resources that we're now discarding. So I think it's important to say scientific. So that was
Okay, so I'm hearing that maybe Marge is aiming to have that as a separate recommendation, just making sure that's, and I think we still have that there that we'll get to. But I guess with that, we had John's proposal to just say which review the work product. Oh, sorry, John, I saw your hand.
Well, I was just wondering, I agree with you totally, Marge, that these committees would be of value. I just wonder, are we duplicative with a technical advisory committee and a scientific advisory committee? Because my experience, some of the scientists have ad hoc or even guest roles on technical advisory committees, and you could absorb that. I've never heard the difference. I've never been involved in enough processes to know if there's distinctions between the two. I just don't want to be duplicative if we can avoid it.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go for it.
No.
Okay, Ryan.
Yeah, so I guess where I see this finding number 3, and it seems like we're talking about 2 separate subjects. One is a recommendation for a scientific advisory committee or something down in the recommendations. On this finding number 3, though, I believe all this is talking about, again, is how do we write the RFP to get the team on board? And I guess my question would be, first of all, I like what John had proposed. I think that really kind of makes it very, very concise. And so the technical advisory committee, as I understand it in this process, is the technical experts for the, let's call it again, state procedural process to contract out the work. So to ensure that that RFP is written in a way that you don't select someone and then all of a sudden there's finding fault with the process of selection that didn't follow the Oregon regulatory, the ORS or something like that. That's what I remember us talking about on the technical advisory committee but maybe I'm totally confused on this. So I'll just stop. Marge, what do you think?
Well, what I had in mind was not the RFP at all, but later when the consultant is hired and actual recommendations are being brought forth, that then we have this scientific advisory committee who can assist in, just really formulating an outstanding plan for our county, that all the latest technology, and as Ken points out, it's continually advancing, that we're always at the cutting edge, and not the bleeding edge, the good cutting edge.
Thanks, Marge. So we have a proposal from Ken here. I'm just going to add it to the bottom here just so it's not getting lost in the track changes. But essentially, the last part of that sentence says, which the CAC, which review the RFP from the community perspective. I think that's fair to sum up the gist of this finding. I'm comfortable with that. If other folks are. Okay, seeing some thumbs up. Ryan, Marge, I'm seeing nods. Okay. John, does that work for you?
Yeah, that works.
Okay. So let me just go ahead and accept this one so we see what we're working with here. And I will delete this one. All right. So I left the last bit that we talked about earlier, if that still works for everyone. Calling out institutions of higher learning that John proposed. Perfect. All right. Any other areas that we want to focus on here? I had just a couple small things, but yeah, Sean.
Number 8, I see my name.
Yep.
Can we please get your mouse to government, and delete the period and it, and replace with which is used as a benchmark or lens. Nope. Yeah, everything else was fine. As a benchmark or lens for initiatives, which is what you had, which is fine. Okay, and then after benchmark or lens, they're done.
All right.
Other than that, yeah, that.
Does that work for everyone else? I wanted to loop Sean in on this since he's our local thriving communities expert. Perfect.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, I'll correct the coloring there. The only items I had was a small one. I think we're missing the and beyond intent of this finding number 1. Just saying that plans and RFPs we originally had exists in Oregon and beyond, but the replacement doesn't have the sort of and beyond idea there. And I just wanted to make sure we're capturing that just in case we want to use other areas for inspiration. Yeah, Marge.
I just want to acknowledge that I think we've totally lost the idea that I brought up as a finding. Because what I brought up had to do with not the writing the RFP, but actually being involved in the process of writing an SMMP, not an RFP, but an SMMP. And I just want to say that.
Yeah,
that's. I mean, I'll go with what the committee is. If the committee is uncomfortable with that, then so be it.
I'm not hearing discomfort from the rest of the group. I think everyone's actually really hoping to capture that. So thanks for directing our attention to it. Yeah, Ken.
I'm just, Marge, are you talking about the scientific?
Yes.
Yes. So yes. So I think what we've concluded is just that we had two kind of parallel conversations going on. One was about the RFP and we've resolved that. So I don't think we've said anything really about the scientific review committee yet. So because I very much look forward to having that conversation.
Yeah, and I think there is going to be under recommendations. I think that the tagline calling out institutions of higher learning here is, leads into that recommendation that we've preserved or we haven't talked about yet. But if that, yeah, Sean.
To get to your question, I strongly support and beyond at the end. I would never want an RFP or anyone's thought process to only be constricted to our state. We've been talking a lot about international, national, all kinds of different places. I would strongly recommend putting and beyond.
Is that okay with everyone? Okay. The only other nitpicky thing I would say is I think this could be the word may instead of would. The consultant would. I think just to keep it as a finding, I think it makes sense to have may here if nobody objects. Okay. And then I just wanted to add on that I'm sure you've already seen it, but I added this language at the end here after Marge and Ken's proposed edits. I just felt like we lost the idea that the SMMP isn't all about landfills. And I think that was a really important, that kind of the way we had crafted this finding was in response to that. So I just added a clarity of, what SMMPs typically are. And I wanted to tag that on there. Make sure the group felt okay with that. I'm seeing some thumbs up. Okay.
Okay, can I just ask, I'm unclear, is what your comment is that already is
yeah, yeah.
If it's included in F6, your comment is included. Okay.
Sorry about that. That was unclear. Yeah, I was jotting down ideas and then I thought, man, I better just add this in there as a proposed edit. Okay, so that was all I had. Is there any other concerns or comments? Oh, actually, sorry. The only other one was we added infrastructure is impacted in a non-trivial way, as well as this in place 90% of annual waste intake. My only concern, well, I had two concerns. One is 90% isn't necessarily accurate. The latest numbers we have is 88%. So, but then also, and I know that's a small thing, but also it's not a set in stone number. So I don't want the reader to think that we're like capped at 10% waste from Benton County going into landfill. But then we also haven't evaluated the infrastructural impact from the landfill on the county. And I just don't think that makes sense to include in our findings, because we haven't found that. So those are my two things. Basically, delete the infrastructure is impacted in a non-trivial way, and do something more generic, as well as the 90% piece. Basically, just delete 90% and do something more generic about. Yeah, Sean.
I think that one of the things I've really valued about this process is attention to detail and numbers, and some of the other subcommittees going through box after box after box to make sure that what we're writing is accurate. And so I hope we would have that same level of integrity in this process. So if you're the expert, Daniel, you know these numbers, so I'm going to defer to you. But number one, if we don't have, my default as a government agent, if I don't have the number, I'm not going to say a number. So either one of the two, I agree with you, either have the right number or make it more general. And also just kind of make, and if we haven't really spent time on this, I would also agree with you from a government and from this process to make sure that what we write is what we've actually done. So those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, and I guess just to be clear, I think just for time's sake, my recommendation is just to not accept this findings changes and leave it as it was. Yeah, Marge.
I would say that 88% is Republic Services number, and I'm good with it. So I just think that that is not a number anyone would disagree with. It's the number that you come up with if you look at the PRC reports. But I think that it is important to say somewhere in here that the great majority of the waste is not being generated in Benton County. I mean, it's an issue that residents are very bothered by, and we can't get away from that.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you on that. So I guess I'm open to capturing that. Maybe what we could do, maybe a proposal. Well, yeah, go for it, Ryan.
Well, I would just, can we just say the vast majority of the landfill waste? Is that a true statement that would pass muster? I mean, because it is the vast majority. I mean, majority is more than 50% or greater, and or substantial majority or something. Because if the number is going to change, let's say year to year to year slightly, and if we're trying to be technically correct and we can't be technically correct with the number, that's just a thought.
I mean, I think that's accurate, but yeah, go for it, Marge.
I'd go for vast majority.
Yeah, so we have that drafted here. I feel comfortable with that. And then the only other thing with this one, I would get rid of in a non-trivial way, or some way to work that into the sentence to make it more general. But right now we just haven't reviewed that, and that's not a finding of the group. Yeah, Ken.
I think in a non-trivial way is indeed pretty general, as I understand the language anyway. So I think we just need to evaluate how else you would say it. So do we have a proposal about what the language would be? But to me, that's the question.
Sure. I mean, my proposal would just go back to the original language. I thought it was appropriate and general enough.
So I'm sorry, you're just saying to delete the phrase in a non-trivial way.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, instead of having Benton County infrastructure is impacted in a non-trivial way, saying the county is impacted by other counties, you could say use of facilities, but yeah, getting rid of infrastructure is impacted in a non-trivial way.
How about county infrastructure is impacted?
Sure. I'm also just mindful of when this was crafted, it wasn't just about infrastructure, and now it is about infrastructure. So like the functional meaning of this finding changed during the revisions. And I don't know why. I don't know why infrastructure is suddenly a focus, because that wasn't a finding of our group either. But if that's what the group finds now, I'm okay with that. But I think we're trying to say generally, and more in the spirit of what a sustainable materials management plan is. It's about impacts more generally, not just infrastructural. But I think maybe it was consolidated from another finding, perhaps. So we talked about infrastructure. I'm not sure. I don't know. I know we mentioned facilities, so maybe that was the infrastructure piece. But yeah, Sean.
I guess I kind of have to agree with you on that one, Daniel. I like us keeping it broad and not in many cases being too specific, because we could hit a lot of different topics. I think I kind of like how it was before as well. That's and to keeping it broad. Again, it's a finding, it's not a recommendation. So that's just my thought, to keep it broad. Hey, there's a lot of pieces to this whole thing. So that's my thought.
Okay, so we have a proposal to revert it back to this part of it, revert back to the original. Marge proposed to include infrastructure in there instead of just generally impacted. Any other thoughts? Do folks prefer one or the other? Oh, sorry, go for it, Ken.
No, I was just going to suggest, could you just revert it right now so that we could look at it?
Yeah.
I think I would say the county and its infrastructure is impacted. I think that just puts a little more clarity on kind of where the impacts tend to fall. But I respect the general part as well.
Any other concerns with that proposed edit? My only thing is I think waste streams shouldn't be plural here, but
Yeah, that's fine.
all right, hearing none other. Well, I'll hold it for another moment, see if anybody has any other changes. Okay, hearing none, let's go ahead and move on to recommendations. So as you all know, we have a lot more recommendations than findings. Do folks have anywhere they want to draw our attention to? I'll slowly scroll through it, see if anybody has their memories jogged. Yeah, Ken.
Before we forget, why don't we take up Marge's suggestion for the scientific review committee?
Good idea, thank you. So we added this finding here, this recommendation here. I also included Ken's proposed change to that recommendation. So I just did a cross through on Marge's end of her first sentence, included Ken's version there, just so everyone can sort of see them. Sorry. Any concerns with this one?
I'm not sure. Do we have a recommendation for a technical advisory committee farther up?
A technical advisory committee or a scientific advisory committee?
Technical advisory committee.
Yeah, that was the one that we were looking at earlier.
A recommendation.
No, sorry, a finding. Let's see. You're saying a recommendation.
I thought we had also
Yeah.
a corresponding, yeah, right there, 21.
Yeah.
I just don't know if this, the way we've stated it with the universities mentioned here, why we would need it again. if a scientific advisory is distinctly different than a technical advisory committee, then I would say we could say that up here and say, in addition, a technical advisory committee, scientific advisory committee, but if this and a CAC could provide, it could all be stated here. But unless, a scientific advisory is intended to do something different than both of these other committees, then I just need to understand that better.
Thanks, John. Marge and then Sean.
Well, I think scientific advisory committee is more specific than technical advisory committee. And up above in the findings, we talked about a technical advisory committee with respect to formulating the RFP. And that sounded kind of like people who understood what RFP should be like. And that's an entirely different skill set than somebody who is breaking carbon bonds on a daily basis. So that's, I guess, what I'd say about that.
So you're in favor of keeping those separate? Maybe we can yeah. So
Or if not the recommendation separate, then at least modifying 21 to make a distinction that a scientific committee is composed of people with scientific expertise.
okay. Well, let's go to Sean. And what do you think, Sean?
I'm with John. I've never, in all my career, especially with Chesapeake Bay, and we had scientists, we had technical people, depending upon the topic, shellfish, fin, like, I've never seen a difference between a scientific committee and a technical advisory. I mean, they're the same. And from my perspective as a government, if you're gonna research something, I don't see the difference. They're going to be the same. Basically, what we're saying here, I'm focusing on the last sentence, subject matter experts. So if that's a scientific thing, if that's a technical thing, if that's whatever it is, that's where I'm so I see it as a general thing. I don't think we need to have two, or put in parentheses after TAC or scientific advice or something, if it means that much. But from my seat in government, I'm not seeing any difference between the two.
I just wanted to jump in really quick. What I'm thinking might be something that would help here is, since the finding was sort of more RFP kind of procedurally specific, I think the gist of this recommendation is that it's more broad. It's not just the RFP process, but the actual review of the SMMP work product. So I think with that, if we can capture that here, make it clear with that, I think John's last line to subject matter experts from Oregon State makes sense, and would cover the sort of scientific piece of it. Because I think the group's recommendation is that a TAC and a CAC review the entire process, is sort of my understanding. So does that sound okay to people? And Marge specifically, what do you think?
Well, I just want to say that we are in a unique position, and that we do have a university here, and we have other universities surrounding us very closely. So we have scientific expertise at our disposal that most counties do not have. And I just want to make the point that we are a unique area, and that this is one of the ways in which we are unique. And that's something that we should make use of. That was my goal. And you all can decide how something like that might be added, but that is what my goal was.
Thanks, Marge. So briefly, I added SMMP development here in parentheses just after the consultant's technical work, just to clarify that I think we're asking a TAC and a CAC to weigh in on the actual document, not just the RFP process. And then, but I don't want to lose Marge's comments about Benton County being unique there. So feel free to weigh in. So we have Ryan and then Ken.
Yeah, I think the way you put that, it's important because I think we're talking about two things. We're talking about, first of all, writing the RFP, and you need to have the technical advisory committee on the RFP process, but that is probably not the same committee as Marge brought up. That's not the same group that's going to be working on the SMMP at all. It's almost like we're talking about two separate technical advisory committees. One is RFP based and one is everything else. I mean, the RFP technical advisory committee is going to have a very short lifespan, and then I think there should be done. And then from there, then you have the technical advisory committee that's working on everything else that doesn't necessarily have to get into the weeds on the processes of contracting out the work.
That's how I understood it too. Ken.
Yeah, so Ryan, what you said is how I understand it also. And I'm just looking at the beginning of R21, and it says it's important that the SMMP process, and et cetera. So I think the context of this, the way I've always understood it and the way I think it should be for this recommendation, we are indeed talking about what is working with the consultant in developing the SMMP. That's what this is related to. So I'm thinking about the difference between the technical advisory committee and the science advisory committee. And to me, the technical advisory committee is kind of engaged with the present. So we're talking about present levels of knowledge. That's kind of what is implied in more technical work. But when we talk about science, I'm really thinking more about the future, and the future has a big part, of course, in the SMMP. And so that's why I really support, I think that people understand what a technical advisory committee is about, but I'm thinking that what Marge is proposing, not to speak for you, Marge, but, I think what we're talking about is the ability, like we mentioned in that particular recommendation, the ability to do research, to research kind of where things are going as opposed to where they are right now. So that is, I think, is an element that makes it valuable to bring up this idea of having a separate science advisory committee as a recommendation.
Thanks, Ken. So I put these side by side just so that we can both see them, but I think also for the reader, so that, if these are both retained, they can kind of see how they're related or not. So I guess the proposal now, we sort of wrapped up 21 for the most part. I think we're all sort of there with finding 21. And the question is whether or not 21 covers this scientific advisory committee concept. Ken proposes that they both are retained for the differences that Ken noted. Is there any concerns about having both of these as written? Marge and then Sean.
What you didn't put in there is to reflect the unique quality of our situation. We want to exploit the unique opportunities that we have here.
So
and that.
Yeah, no, thanks, Marge. And to be fair, we actually did review that. You proposed that finding before, and the group reviewed it and essentially just decided that they didn't want that finding in the document. But just for context, but I'll put it back to the group too if we want. I think it would make sense as a finding though, maybe not so much as a recommendation. But yeah, let's put it back to the group.
Well, I'm sorry.
Go for it, Sean.
I have my previous comment, but for Marge, I'm just seeing that last sentence clear as day, subject matter expertise here at Oregon State University is, I mean, whether or not we use the word unique, there's plenty of communities that have it, but I see that there. To get to the other point, I'd be something, can we do something like a technical advisory committee and or scientific advisory committee in that first paragraph? And then that would combine and leave it to the next group if they need all three committees.
I see Sam wanted to jump in.
So I think this may work if the intent, which I understand it to be, is to make sure we recognize the fast moving nature and the fact that we have people literally in the community that have available to this. I think that concept should be part of what the TAC includes. The Technical Advisory Committee includes both people who are knowledgeable about what's going on now and appreciative of cutting edge, futuristic kinds of concerns. Having been involved in some of these processes, in their implementation, you don't want to have too many subcommittees. I mean, too many advisory committees, because it just mucks up the entire process. From a practical, to make it more reasonable, I suggest you have the TAC, but make sure it includes the kind of people that you want and their expertise to do it. If it's called the SAC or a TAC, I don't think it's going to make that much difference if you have the people at the table. And then I'll sit with that, and I'll give you one just very small thing. So reactions to that, we all agree we want the full range of experts, ones that know the status quo and one can help with the future. And we want to tap local talent and community. Is that something we can all agree with? So, so then what's left is, do you call them a separate committee or simply insist by way of recommendation that they be part of a TAC?
So I guess one of the sort of ways to roll that proposal in is taking this last sentence and saying the TAC should include subject matter experts from OSU and other universities in Benton County, and we can include Ken's additions here, saying many of the subject areas of essential importance to the SMMP are characterized by fast-moving science, so that way it's captured there. Does that essentially is saying, to Sam's point, capturing that within that TAC subcommittee, that expertise? Yeah, Sean.
I'm totally down with that. Although we only have one university in Benton County. So something like, or here at Oregon State and other regional academic, I don't care. Go for it, Daniel, whatever words you want to say, but or other local research or academic institutions, something like that. I agree with you, Marge, 1000%. We are blessed with having great research opportunities here, Oregon and other in the region. I think that's cool. Regional, cool. Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe other academic.
Regional sounds good. Yeah.
Nope, wrong autocorrect. Okay, so I included subject matter experts from, or the TAC should include subject matter experts from OSU and other regional academic institutions, and then included Ken's last sentence here. Does that work for the group? All right, seeing nods, seeing thumbs up, excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. Thanks, everyone. Any other thoughts on recommendations? We had this last one that was proposed as well. I think Ken might have been one of your proposals here. to that, recommending the county do a waste audit characterization. Is anybody concerned with that? Does anybody want to change it? Marge.
I agree with it. I think that we need more information about the landfill. And the last franchise agreement did not require a study like that. And so it would be good to include it here.
Thanks, Marge. Sean and then John.
Can we delete the first clause? I'm fearful there's a lot of recommendations that we need to do this before the plan, this before the plan, this before the plan. I mean, we're doing so many things before the plan even starts that it's going to be a year before that hits. I am totally in agreement with getting more information. Please do not interpret my comment as that. But is this something that we can initiate early, and then that's part of the plan development? I'm as a government agent, I'm also wanting to make sure that we're moving toward the plan, not haphazardly, not blindly, but I just also want to make sure that we can get to that actual part. So
Yeah, and maybe it's driven by what the consultant needs as opposed to.
Yeah.
I
I
get what
just
you're
want to
saying.
put that you have to do step by step by step by step. Some of this can be.
Well, let's approach that really quick before I get to the other hands. Do I see a general thumbs up on that? Does that make sense to folks? I'm seeing one from Ken. Okay. Well, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and delete that piece. And then let's go to John and then Ken.
Yeah, I agree with this in principle. At having Daniel and I think the current SWAC may be aware of the last effort to develop some alternative waste prevention programs. We evaluated the existing audit data that the state, that DEQ had, and some of that was included some estimates for the county or for Coffin Butte, but I don't think it was adequate. We didn't consider it adequate, and I can almost guarantee that any consultant worth their salt will either expect that data, or if it's not adequate or available, they will conduct it. And how you conduct that audit is just as important. So I agree with not holding, not requiring it before or starting it before, because the consultant will have the capabilities, I expect, and the to actually include that as part of a benchmarking effort. And part of it would be, what do we audit? Do we audit, and how do we audit? So there's all kinds of methods, and I mean, there is certain standards, but that's my thought on that.
Thanks, John. And Ken. So
I agree with what John just said. So should we change the language? Right now it says Benton County should initiate, initiate an audit. So how would we change that language to kind of reflect that we want to do it, hand in hand with the SMMP consultant, but prioritize it, I guess, is kind of what we're coming to. The thing that I remember from SWAC discussions about a waste audit is it takes time. So it's not something you can, you need to kind of do a survey over time, not a snapshot of what's going into the landfill. So that's kind of part of what, I wanted to convey in here is just, how do we kind of prioritize the, getting that process started?
Thanks, Ken. John.
Well, I think that we could word it in such a way as a complete waste or a complete materials audit is highly recommended, and as both a benchmark and a way to monitor progress, and continually inform the adjustments to the plan over the next 20 years. So, Ken, I think we should probably expect that if, for the first iteration of this plan, we would have a much stronger benchmark. It might be able to be compared to some of the data we already have, but I wouldn't hold the consultant up on making their recommendations to the county by not having a 3-year data plan, 3-year audit after a benchmark. That would hold it up, hold up progress. So I think we would leave it up to the consultant to do the best audits possible. I think it would be premature for us to engage a separate consulting firm, or ask the county to engage a separate consulting firm to do an audit, and then the new consultant comes in, with much broader, expansive knowledge, and then they may not agree with how the audit was done or whatever. So that's kind of my 2 cents there.
Thanks, John. So I was jotting down a bit of what you were saying, basically the first sentence there. I didn't capture all of it, obviously. And I guess I'm looking for a proposal on how to change or update this recommendation based on John's feedback. And Ken, I know you were giving a thumbs up. Any other thoughts on how this can be changed? How can we incorporate this sentence into the recommendation? Is the sentence the recommendation? I just want to make sure I'm.
I like that sentence a lot. That last one that you replaced the first one.
Okay. Any other thoughts there? Okay. I'm hearing no other thoughts with that. And I think it seems like it leaves it open-ended to basically let this audit kind of take place within the context of the SMMP as it makes the most sense. Marge.
I think what Sean was saying is we take that sentence and put it to the front. Like that, and put it to the front. Yeah, right there. Exactly. And then Benton County. Yeah.
Does that make sense to the group?
I guess I'm missing. Yes, thank you, Marge. I like it as a first sentence. Then should initiate. Okay, but was the SMMP consultant will require? I appreciate John's comment about we shouldn't be telling the SMMP what to do, but definitely this is something that we need. So that sentence, the SMMP consultant sentence, do we need that?
Do you folks think we can delete that sentence at this point based on John's feedback?
I just really appreciate the comment about we shouldn't be telling the consultant what to do, but I also absolutely agree with the group that this act should be done.
Yeah, Ken.
So instead of will require, because that seems problematic, I agree that's problematic. The SMMP consultant can use this audit information.
I'm down with that.
That makes sense. Any other concerns with that as written?
I think just the last sentence, it would be encouraged to, maybe something like, it would be recommended, it's recommended to establish or complete an audit as soon as possible in the process, to provide a benchmark, followed by the consultant's recommendation for follow-up audits.
So I wrote the audit should be completed as soon as possible to provide a benchmark as well. And I wrote as well as follow-up audits, but
You could
and-
reword that by just saying the benchmark audit. And then you could take out or the benchmark audit should be completed as soon as possible. Followed by along with recommendations for follow-up audits. Because who knows? I mean, I don't know if this
yeah,
is going to take 2 years, and then they do an audit the first year, and then they could do an audit the second year. But audits are not inexpensive either, depending on how you do them. And so we'll have to think, have to look at how much they're, what they're saying to do.
that makes sense. Any concerns with that as written? Okay, hearing none. So that brings us to the end of, oh, Sean.
Yes, number 15. So you and I have, and I want to be full disclosure with everyone, a little bit of internal conversations about SWAC being a participant. I know that SWAC and DSAC are huge partners in this. There are other county advisory committees. I staff the Environment and Natural Resources Advisory Committee, and obviously that the whole sustainable materials management process has a huge environmental impact, and they are very interested in being part of this. I'm opening it up. Daniel, is there general language that could be added that is just not piercingly focused on just these two? I'm looking to you to see where that line is. I don't want to open up to every organization in the county. I could see where that could become cumbersome, but also we have other county resources and advisory committees that if we do a true SMMP might be germane to their charter.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sean. And you know what? We actually covered this already in our stakeholders to be considered at the table.
Okay.
So we already kind of had this discussion, and we didn't really copy and paste that finalized to 15.
Yep.
So I'm glad you brought this up. And essentially what we got to was that county advisory committees should related to the SMMP work should be included. And that opens the door for, other groups, as well as NRAC, which is Sean's group that he works with. I think that makes sense. And that's what we already included in that stakeholders to be included table, if that works for everyone else.
I totally get that. And I do appreciate that. I totally get that. It caught my attention that just these two were specifically addressed and not the others. That's why I bring it up, and I'm just bringing it up for that purpose. I'm not falling on a sword for that one, and it is included in that. So that's why I'm bringing it up.
Does that sound good to the group? I'm seeing some nods. Okay. And so I just wrote Benton County's advisory committees related to SMMP work should have an advisory role in the during the development of the plan. I'm seeing some thumbs up there. Excellent. Sam. Oh, you're muted.
Please scroll down to the end of the recommendations. Right there is good. I'm just going to point out that R26, there's a legal overlay there. I mean, the statement on its face, to me, is pretty innocuous. The county should evaluate everything in this report as to whether or not they're in their best interest. But to the extent this is to say, have a SMMP in place prior to making a decision on the landfill expansion, that is the whole back and forth that's currently bubbling quite hot. on whether or not that is possible or not. And I'm just pointing out that if we wrote any major materials decision, if that was code for landfill expansion or not expansion, then we should, make that clear, because there are legal issues that are being worked out on that.
Thanks, Sam. That was the original sort of drafted recommendation, I think, was that this an SMMP be in place before a decision on landfill expansion, and the group went back and forth and essentially made it more general finding. And so that, I think, if I'm capturing that correctly, that was the gist of it, but the group wanted to include kind of broader decision making within that. So I don't know if that changes or if there's any way to update this to address your concerns, Sam.
Well, it's not so much a concern, it's the potential of how it's going to be used. I think the term major materials management decisions by definition includes the CUP for expansion. It also includes all kinds of other important issues too. But in this context, by making it broad, I think it is absolutely includes the CUP application. And all I'm pointing out is there are legal challenges with that, which are not here to be debated this afternoon. They'll come out in the next week to 10 days.
Thanks, Sam. So are you, just to clarify, are you proposing that we include landfill expansion in this language? Is that just to clarify that it would be included in major materials management decisions?
All I am doing is if this subcommittee is in consensus on the language as it's written, I'm as happy as a clam at high tide. For those who may not be appreciating how this could be used down the road and the challenges that exist, I'm simply pointing out that as a consideration for which you can do or not do whatever you'd like as a subcommittee.
Thanks, Sam. And Marge.
Well, I take issue with what Sam just said, because I think that we cannot predict how recommendations are going to be used. I think if he makes that argument about this, then we have to start at the beginning and go through all our recommendations and try to imagine how people might interpret them. So I just take exception to. I think it's worded in a very general way, and I think it reflects what all of our committee is okay with. And
Thanks, Marge.
honestly, this is kind of perhaps out of line, but I'm a little disturbed that the facilitator is making a comment like that.
It's my job, Marge, to point out intersections.
That would change a recommendation that a committee has come to.
Well, let's see if there's any other thoughts on this one. Yeah, Ken.
Recommendation 26, the subcommittee spent a fair amount of time on it. They worked it, we worked it into the language that we wanted. I haven't heard anything that calls into question the language or the existence of the recommendation. So I just propose that we move on.
Let me be real clear. I never suggested it be changed. I'm suggesting it's possible interpretations. And I said at least twice that if this subcommittee is happy with it, I am as, quote, happy as a clam at high tide. So it is my obligation to point out the interconnections because I'm in all of these meetings. That's all I was doing. So I'm happy to move on from this.
Thanks, Sam. And Sean.
I'm a policy analyst by trade. And so Sam, I appreciate, thank you for just giving that perspective from all the other committees because we're not hearing that. So I just want to be out loud and say thank you for making those connections.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Agreed. John, I see your mic came on. Go for it.
No, I didn't have anything.
Okay. All right. So any other thoughts on recommendations? We're coming to the end here. So if there's anything else, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, we'll try to get to the rest of the report here. Okay, hearing none, we're going to go through and do the old highlight and accept changes. And I will clean up all the X's that show, you know, that need to be numbers. I'll do all that if the group is comfortable with me updating the document that way. Is there anywhere else that the group would like to draw our attention to in the document? Any other focal points? Yeah, Sean.
Yeah, the page 9. I'm just saying because I sent the email and so I want to just
Might have gotten.
Oh
yeah.
gosh, I'm sorry. I apologize. It's the charge C tasks.
Okay.
I don't know what
Perfect.
page it is now.
Yep, page 9, still there.
I only because I sent the email. I'm not trying to waste time. I must have been hitting the head with a brick because I thought we reorganized this into more of a prioritization, and I just want to make sure I wasn't completely not lucid anymore.
No, thanks, Sean. So I'm so sorry I didn't include that and address that in the document. So Sean was basically saying that we already reorganized the content of the document to match sort of the group's expectations of what shows up where. But this charge C, sort of, if you view it as a table of contents, it doesn't match what the order we did address things in the document, which I can do if the group is comfortable with that. What we did was we copy and pasted the charge from the work group charter into this document, and what we could do is have a table of contents at the front, and so that folks aren't just drawn to the order of the charge, or I could just reorder the items in the charge. I don't think it matters, and Sam, feel free to jump in if there's any concern about reordering the items in the charge to be treated that way. But if the group is comfortable with that, I'm happy to do that as I do my final kind of cleanup after our meeting.
For me, you articulated it far better than I did. It was just consistency and on what that is, but I kind of leave it to you on how you think is easiest, and also I don't know how the other subcommittees are organizing theirs. So if there's a template or a logical order that we could emulate, I'm cool. But you hit it perfectly. It was just the inconsistency and not thinking that our number one priority of this subcommittee was to contract out, which I don't think that has been. So that was it.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Does the group feel okay if I reorder the charge items in the order that we approach them in the document? Okay. Seeing nods. Thanks, Sean. Thanks for the reminder there. So we had John's review of common terms and definitions. Is everyone okay with John's submission there? Excellent. Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and highlight this section here and resolve it. As you know, this might be one of those things that's satisfying to do, but might take up too much time. So I might do that after for the next ones. Okay, so then are we comfortable with the introduction section that Ken rewrote, or not rewrote, but helped reword? Any concerns? I only had a couple that I jotted down here that I'm happy to bring up, but I wanted the group to have an opportunity to weigh in. Okay, well, I will jump into I think I only had two here. The first one, there's a little dash after explaining with an end of life approach by landfilling them locally in Coffin Butte landfill. I just wanted to clarify, like, the end of life approach includes landfilling, but also is recovery and composting. That's all the sort of end of life phase of a material. So I just suggested deleting that line there, just to make that clear. It sort of recenters the document on landfilling when we sort of know that we're talking about materials life cycles more generally, and I just wanted to capture the accuracy of what that end of life cycle phase means. Is anybody concerned with deleting that line?
Can you just, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Sorry, let me.
Which specific line, Daniel? I'm sorry.
I'm just proposing deleting the one that I just highlighted there, dash by landfilling them locally in Coffin Butte landfill. I'll also entertain other options to make it sort of match the end of life definition better, but I think that would be the simplest. Yeah, Ken.
Yeah, I'm not okay with that, because that is, what happens to the vast majority of materials. The end of life approach is indeed by landfilling them. So maybe we can just move the word largely, which, up there at the beginning. So it says traditionally Benton County has managed waste materials with end of life approach largely by landfilling them locally. And that way it just continues, the idea continues into the next sentence, because if we deleted it, it would, we would have to be rewriting that sentence also. I'm
Thanks.
also okay, with the largely sentence there, if we wanted to put a comma in after landfill and say, but also by, and listing the other end of life options that you mentioned in your comment, that's fine too. It just helps people understand what we mean by end of life approach, which is good.
So I really appreciate that addition, and I would feel more comfortable adding, but also by recovery, recycling, composting, if that's okay.
Right. Okay.
Excellent. That works for me. Thank you, Ken. Any other concerns with that? I think I had one more. Yeah, John.
For the next paragraph, I have one concern.
Okay, go for it.
Second sentence, just a little awkward. I think it could be rewritten and it still have the same meaning. Based on upon the magnitude of ideas and possibilities we have encountered, I would take out this SMMP feels like. I would say it is anticipated that the SMMP could usher in a paradigm shift.
Is that okay with the group? Seeing some nods, seeing a thumbs up. That works for me.
Okay.
Thanks, John. Okay, any other concerns or items to address with the introduction?
Yeah, I've got one.
Yeah.
So right there where we are right now, so stop, no more schools. It says the primary task underneath the yellow there.
Mm-hmm.
I just have an issue with that. I think that was it's kind of the primary task that the subcommittee was was kind of handed, I guess, or at least the approach was. But to me, the subcommittees kind of, I think that the questions that the subcommittee developed, are more important than the table of contents. So while I agree that, was kind of the primary task when we started out, I don't think when we're looking back at it, like that's a good characterization.
Thanks, Ken. Would 1 be a better way? Just to lead into the
Sure, that would be
context of,
fine. Yeah.
does everyone
And-
feel okay with that? Oh, go for it.
I'm just noting that it also, that is repeated down below. When we get there, we can change that, but that's good.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Any other thoughts there? Okay, so I'm realizing we're at 2:30. I'm sorry, I should have done a quick time check. How are we feeling? We probably don't have a ton of time to like dive into specific things, but if we want to go through the rest of this document quickly and just kind of in bulk, make sure we're okay with sections, do folks have 15 minutes to spend doing that? Ken, 15 minutes turned into 30 pretty quick last time, so you're already, where we're at with that.
I already did the math in my head. I knew what
Yeah.
you meant when you said 15.
Yeah. Okay. If folks are okay with that, let's continue and let's try to do things as bulk driven as possible so we can get through this. Yeah, Sean.
Just one, my main specific is now on the introduction where the questions are. I have 21 on the what you sent out. I like all the questions. I think that's totally cool. I mean, there are others questions. Whoop, stop. Whoop, go up. The very first line, questions to be answered in the SMMP.
Okay.
That's where I have a little bit of an stop. Come back down. There you go.
Oh, got it.
There
Thanks.
you go.
Sorry.
I think questions that should be addressed in the SMMP development, that's way too many questions to force a consultant or a future group to answer each and every one of them and feel that they don't answer each and every one of them, they failed or something. I love the list. Please do not interpret it in any other way. But these are the thoughts, these are the questions that should be addressed in the process. And I'm going to let you wordsmith away, but something like that, they don't feel like they're bound to answer each and every one of them.
Thanks, Sean. And we do have a recommendation that covers essentially them addressing these. So I think that makes sense in the context of the recommendation that we already have.
Should be considered. I'm fine with that too. I would something like that. And I'm all, me, I love consistency. If we say a language in the front, should be in the back, so it's nice and consistent. So whatever was used.
Yeah, is this change okay with the group? Seeing some nods.
I heard
Okay.
that Ken had considered. I can go either way.
Oh, considered.
Is that what you had, Ken?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
it's in the chat.
Oh, sorry.
It's
I'm-
okay.
I'm totally cool with that.
All right. I'm hearing considered works for the group. Excellent. Perfect. So is there anywhere else folks want to draw our attention to? I can scroll down. We've added a couple of the questions that Ken raised, so I just pop them in there, Ken, and the appropriate sections there. So we're in this questions section. I think everyone seems pretty comfortable with this generally. So let's scroll down. Maybe I can go to, okay, lessons learned. This is a good one since so much content was added. This was the ask for me to go back to that recording and put some bullets. So I did my best to track that hour of conversation and capture them. And yeah, just wanted to make sure the group felt comfortable with that. And we basically got a fair amount of detailed feedback from other counties that largely went into the basis for the conversations that we had. basic things like, we threw around the 2-year time frame a couple times in our discussions, and that was rooted in the feedback that we had gotten. So it sort of all tracks once we had that information in there, but just wanted to see if anybody else had concerns with this section here. I did include a link to the recording. I know it's hard to see, but I did a hyperlink there, as well as the time in that recording that conversation started, to direct the reader. Okay. Seeing a thumbs up from Marge. Any concerns here? Okay. I know the goal was to have like 5 bullets, but it was frankly just so hard to capture all of it. So I hope it's okay that I went more bullets. Okay. Excellent. Feel free to just interrupt me if you want me to go to a certain section. Otherwise, I'll just make sure that we're good with these sections. This was our who should be at the table list. It's been largely sort of slowly growing, but largely a lot of consensus around that. And I'm not really seeing, yeah, Sean.
Page 35, my 35, which you sent out earlier, in the
Okay.
conclusion.
Yeah.
Can we please replace citizens with residents? That's
Yes.
it's a very not. We as a county are really focusing in on using residents or people moving in and out, and would hate for that to be. There's enough red flags in this document. We don't need an unnecessary extra one. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, we're making sure to make our language inclusive, so that I'm not hearing other concerns from the group there. Okay, any other areas of the document that folks want to draw our attention to? Is there anything you want me to slowly scroll over? Otherwise, I'm going to ask for essentially if we're okay with accepting the changes as they're currently tracked. Okay, so I'm seeing a thumbs up. So yep, that's my question to the group. Are we good with the document as it's written? Oh, Ken, actually you did mention that one other location.
Yeah, I was just looking at it. It was like page 12, maybe.
Okay, let's go there.
There's a yellow thing.
Oh, so primary, it's probably below this one, right?
It's a little farther down. Our pages are different.
I'll just write. Okay.
There it is.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, I agree. I think it makes sense to rephrase that now that we've done so much work.
So one task you need to add there.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
No problem.
Sean.
Is good.
Oh,
So,
go ahead, Sean.
I'm sorry, Ken. Are we done with that? We done with that, Ken? Okay. In 2 minutes or less, since time is flying by, either Daniel or Sam, what are the expectations or thoughts on Thursday? So we're not going to be wordsmithing on Thursday. It's just going to be voting. Isn't that correct? And then anything that is not consensus cannot be found, is that going to be deleted out of this? I was just a quick review, Sam.
So there's no formal polling on Thursday.
Oh, okay.
This will be the formal polling happens during the 23rd meeting. We're going to have the results of what the public input was on the recommendations from each of the 5 subcommittees. So we'll have that data available for review and discussion. It will be an opportunity for any of the subcommittees, if they have specific findings or recommendations that they would like to call the whole work group's attention to, either because of their importance or because perhaps they're still controversial, or because they conflict with some other subcommittees, findings or recommendations. It will be designed to surface all those issues and discuss them. Whatever changes will be made in the day or two after this Thursday's meeting, and a poll will go out to the work group members on each of the findings and each of the recommendations and each of the sections where they will be asked to poll 1, 2, or 3 with an opportunity to drop in their comments. That will serve as the basis for triaging the meeting agenda for the final meeting, restated if, and only thinking out loud, subject to what the results show of the work group survey. If, for instance, we have a bunch of them that everyone voted 1, well, there's probably no need unless someone wants to change their mind or something. There would probably be no need to dive in and flesh those out in great detail. Any of them that have a 3 voting, I would take them based on number of 3s. So the findings or recs that have more 3s than those that have less 3s, we would go over them one at a time. And the protocol is to ask the person voting 3, to what extent, if any, do they have an amendment that if was accepted by the rest of the work group, they would be in good faith able to change their vote for a 2, and we'll work those as much as we can. And if we don't get a consensus, we don't get a consensus. And then it would note how many people voted 1, how many people voted 2, and how many people voted 3. And then it would be a majority minority polling. And then we would go to the 2s, the bundle of findings and recs that voted 2s, and ask them what would it take by way of an amendment. If accepted by their colleagues, they would change their vote from a 2 to a 1. And so we would go through that iterative process.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate that, Sam.
Thanks, Sean. All right. Yeah, Marge.
Well, okay, so it was hard for me to follow. I mean, I've heard that spiel before, Sam. So are you saying that we're going to vote on the 16th or on the 23rd?
23rd.
Okay, and that was the process for that you were describing. Okay,
Correct.
thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Marge. Thanks, Sam. Okay, so I have a quick ask of the group just to make sure, is it okay if I'm going through and just cleaning up typos and small things, small formatting things? I just want to make sure I have the group's blessing as this makes it in, getting some thumbs up. Thank you. And now I'm just want to ask the group if we're all comfortable with accepting the changes as written, basically accepting the report as drafted, so that we can send it over to the work group as our final product.
Sounds great.
Excellent. Well, this is the time I give a big thank you to everyone. This has been awesome. Yeah, Ken, sorry, go for it.
And we can also get a copy of that?
Yes.
That cleaned up copy, because
yeah,
just to make sure everything implements the way we expect it to implement.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Good reminder. So tonight, well, man, tonight is coming quickly. Probably tomorrow morning, I'll send this over to the group, and you'll just so you can see it. There's not, well, I think I need to get it to you tonight because we're basically wrapping this up into the next subcommittee draft tomorrow throughout the day. So there won't really be time to have like a back and forth if there's any critical errors on my part. So I'll try to get this over to you tonight so that you can review. It should be pretty simple. I'm basically going to accept track changes I might leave some of the formatting stuff to later if that's okay with the group. But yeah, I'll basically track changes today, get it sent out to the group, and make sure it all makes sense to everyone. So feel free to let me know if there's anything critically wrong, but probably not. No more time for wordsmithing. Okay, well,
Great
back
job.
to, yeah, thank you all so much. We did a ton of work on this, and I think the county is in a great place with all the commitment that this group has provided to really, getting started on this SMMP process. So thank you all for your time, for your energy, for your excellent craftsmanship of this document. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure to work with you all, and I really appreciate your expertise and patience and all of that. So thank you.
Nice job, Daniel. You did a great job
You did.
facilitating this.
Thanks.
And great working with you all.
Yes, very good working with you.
We'll see you
Thanks, everyone.
Thursday.
Yep.
All right. Take care, everyone.